My father passed away, leaving a debt of $1M. Upon learning this, my husband Kent said, "We're getting a divorce immediately." I calmly responded, "Okay, I understand." However, the words of the liar would put Kent through hell. I'm Maya, a part-time working housewife in my 50s. My husband Kent, also in his 50s, and our daughter Lisa, 25, is living abroad after an international marriage. Kent and I were childhood friends. Our families lived next door to each other. When we were little, Kent was a lively and talkative child who didn't really listen to others. So, the adults often told him, "Make sure you listen to others, okay?" Contrasting Kent's outgoing nature, I was shy and reserved. Yet, we strangely got along well, playing until dusk daily. In the summer of first grade, Kent's father passed away. He collapsed at work and never came home. Kent, from a single-parent family, was then taken in by relatives and moved to another prefecture. I miss Kent terribly, but as a child, I eventually forgot about him. After graduating from community college, I started working at a local company. 2 years later, Kent joined my department as a new employee. I didn't recognize him at first, but Kent immediately knew it was me. He approached me at the vending machine during break. "Maya, right? Excuse me. It's me, Kent, your old neighbor." Kent. Our unexpected reunion was surprising but pleasant. Initially, we were formal, but soon found we still clicked. We exchanged contact information and started hanging out often, going for meals and drinks when we could. A few months after reuniting, Kent invited me to a fancy bar. I got scolded by the boss again. "You haven't changed a bit, Kent." Sigh, I guess I haven't grown up. Kent seemed a bit down, but his unchanged nature made me happy. I remember when we were little, our teachers and the aunts in the neighborhood used to tell you to listen to what people were saying. Kent smiled as he saw me smiling, but then his face turned serious and he said, "When I was little, I always liked you, Maya. I was so sad when we drifted apart. I had given up hope that I would ever see you again, but now that we are reunited like this, I wonder if it is fate." Kent scratched his head in embarrassment but looked straight at me and confessed, "Maya, will you go out with me?" I was surprised by his confession, but my answer was clear. I'd love to. I had always admired and liked the cheerful and friendly Kent, so different from my introverted and serious self. And that's how we went from childhood friends to lovers. Our relationship progressed smoothly, leading us to decide to get married. Then, Kent visited my family home. My parents were a bit surprised to know he was the one, but they fondly remembered and were delighted. They had always treated Kent like their own child since he often played with me in childhood. They seemed genuinely happy that Kent would become their son-in-law. I have an older brother who was 2 years my senior, but he passed away at 20 in a car accident. He was a bright and kind son, the pride of my parents. Their grief was profound. Our home felt like it had lost its light for a while. My marriage was like a new light after a long darkness. We rented an apartment near my family home. Our married life was blessed with our daughter Elisa, smooth sailing. At work, being in the same department as a couple was a bit tricky, so I transferred to a different one. However, we still saw each other often at work, enjoying breaks and lunches together occasionally. My new department had almost no overtime or weekend work, so I took on most of the housework and childcare. But Kent was very supportive, especially adoring Elisa. When she was a baby, he did most of the bathing, diaper changing, and feeding when at home. As she grew older, he'd take her for walks and shopping, buying her anything she wanted. Kent cherished my parents like his own, and I was truly glad to have married him. I was very happy during this time. Our relationship began to falter when Lisa married internationally and left home. Kent wasn't opposed to her marriage, but seemed very sad to see our only daughter move overseas. He watched her plane take off for a long time. Kent murmured something. "What?" I asked, turning towards him, but he left silently. Did he just sigh heavily? What did he say after that? Our conversations decreased, and things became awkward between us. Even when at home, he was always on his phone. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he seemed distracted. Was this loneliness from Elisa's absence? I thought time would heal it, and decided to wait. By this time, my mother had already passed away. My father, though elderly, was living alone, managing his housework. One day, I received a call from our neighbor at work. My father had been injured and taken to the hospital by ambulance. I explained the situation to my boss and left work immediately. When I asked her what happened, she told me that when she went to deliver the circular, she heard my father yell, "Whoa," and when she went inside, she found him cowering at the bottom of the stairs. It seemed he had missed a step. She called an ambulance and informed me. Fortunately, it was a low fall, but he fractured his leg and would need assistance, even after recovery. I discussed it with Kent. "Hey Kent, my father is going to need help from now on. I'll ask for a helper, but I'd like to take care of him myself too." "That's tough on your dad. But what about your job?" "I'm thinking of quitting my current job and finding part-time work nearby." "Okay, I understand. But I'm busy, so I can't help. Make sure to keep up with our housework too." "Yes, sure." I was puzzled by Kent's cold response, but my mind was occupied with my father's situation. I resigned from my company after explaining the circumstances. So, I began working part-time at a nearby supermarket, juggling it with household chores and caring for my father. Part-time work, housework at home, and at my parents' place, plus assisting my dad, was honestly more than I imagined. I asked Kentaro to help with the housework, but he said, "I'm too busy, I can't do it." "That's why you became a part-timer, isn't it? Don't rely on me." Instead, he criticized the meals and cleaning, and started retreating to his room, sulking. And more often, he was away from home, saying he had to work overtime or on holidays. When I said, "Please talk to Dad sometimes. He wants to see you," he snapped, "Stop it. I'm busy. I have more responsibilities than you, a part-timer." Where had the kind Kent gone? I spent many days in tears, feeling lonely and sad. Seeing my exhausted face, my father always said, "I'm sorry, so sorry." "What are you talking about? There's nothing for you to apologize for. Let's go on a trip once you're better," I encouraged him. But my father was over 85. His energy and strength were fading, and he spent more time in bed. Worried about my father and distressed by being with Kent, I mostly stayed and slept at my parents' house. One morning, when I went to bring breakfast to my father's room, something seemed off with him. Approaching, I realized he wasn't breathing. I called an ambulance in a panic. He was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. I tried contacting Kent, but he was hard to reach. When he finally answered, he sounded annoyed. "What? I'm busy." "Kent, Dad's in the hospital receiving treatment, but he might not make it. Can you come?" "No way. I'm busy, didn't I tell you that? But he's critical. The company would understand, right? He's not my real dad. Bye." "Wait, just..." Kent hung up the phone in the middle of conversation. He didn't answer any more of my calls. How could he? Dad treated him like his own son. I thought maybe this was the end. The word divorce crossed my mind. Despite the doctor's best efforts, my father passed away. I messaged Kent that Dad died and to attend the wake and funeral. At the wake, our daughter Elisa, who had been overseas, came. She looked around, asking, "Where's Dad?" I hadn't told her about Kent yet. "Yeah, he's been busy with work. He should be at the funeral tomorrow," I lied. Kent did show up at the funeral. When had I last seen his face? He seemed happy to see Elisa, saying, "You're here too, Elisa," looking good, but hardly glanced at me. Still, the service went smoothly, and we said our goodbyes to my father. On the 49th day memorial service, we were scheduled to meet with my father's lawyer about his estate. I caught Kent smirking at the mention of inheritance. Dad was a regular salaried worker but had inherited land from my grandfather. Kent knew about this, but we were shocked by what the lawyer revealed. My father had ventured into real estate investment, failed, and left a debt of $1M. $1M. No way. Kent, disappointed that his guess was off, gritted his teeth and slammed the divorce papers on me, saying, "We're getting divorced right away." Kent's column was already filled out. "Divorce over debt. Won't you share the burden?" "I don't plan to go down with you," Kent said. I calmly responded, "Okay, I understand," and took the paper. Cutting off the lawyer's days still more, Kent said, "Just file it quickly and try to leave." Suddenly he looked at my father's wristwatch, which he had treasured during his lifetime, and said, "What a nice thing you have here. I'll take it as a memento." Without hearing us, he left quickly. I had already decided to divorce Kent and promptly filed at the city hall. The application was accepted without issue. A few days later, the lawyer contacted Kent and me. "Mr. Kent, you have inherited all of your father-in-law's estate." Hearing this, Kent's eyes widened. "Wait, what?" he yelled. "Why me? Shouldn't it be Maya? I'm divorced and a stranger now." Maya filed for renunciation of inheritance. "So, you're the inheritor." "Still, I'm not his biological child, so it's none of my business." "You're certainly not his biological son, but you're his son-in-law." Yeah, I took Maya's last name. "Since you were adopted by Maya's parents, you're entitled to the same inheritance rights as Maya." Adoption. Have you forgotten? When we got married, my father asked if he could adopt you as his son-in-law, and you signed the papers, saying you'd be happy to do so since I don't have parents. Apparently, his good-natured personality came out even then, and he agreed to the procedure without thinking anything through. "I'll renounce the inheritance too, then." "Sorry, but you can't." "Why?" "Maya could." "You took his watch, part of the inheritance." "Taking any part of the inheritance means you can't renounce it now." Unbelievable. Kent's face turned pale with despair. "Well, good luck paying off the debt. Oh, and I'll be claiming alimony for your infidelity." I smiled and stood up. "What? Infidelity? I never." Kent stammered. "Lala, right. I'll claim from her too." "How do you know her name?" Kent was stunned. "Mouth agape." "I heard from a close ex-colleague. Lala was a young girl in Kent's department who liked him. A coworker said to Kent, 'You're just my type.' It seems they hit it off at a company drinking party. Kent became more invested in the relationship. Once their affair became known at work, Lala found it uncomfortable and left for her parents' home. She quickly broke up with Kent, burdened with debt. Kent, still employed but uncomfortable, didn't quit to avoid losing alimony and debt payment ability. Despite working, he couldn't pay off the massive debt and went bankrupt. He sold his condo and car, living alone in a shabby apartment. He occasionally asked for financial help or to reconcile, which I ignored. I told Elise about the divorce. When I mentioned his affair with a much younger woman, she said, "You? That's creepy." Elisa also ignores his occasional calls. Kent must regret not being considered even by Elisa, whom he adored. Meanwhile, I rented an apartment and am enjoying my carefree life. I'm planning a trip to visit Elisa overseas. She had a baby. My first grandchild. I bought loads of baby stuff, excited to meet them.